What's up, everybody? This is Romano DeFranco here, and welcome to episode 14 of the Hockey Stories series. The general manager's role plays out an important responsibility of managing a roster. Whether it could be a playoff contending team or dynasty and many more, each team relies on their success instead of being downright embarrassing. Remember, if you can't manage a successful organization, let alone become a responsible general manager, you could be seen as the worst of the bunch. Whether it's successful GMs like David Poyle, Bill Torrey, Jay Feaster, Kevin Cheveldayoff, as well as Doug Wilson, what these have in common is they built a successful franchise. However, one person at this position would be remembered for all the wrong reasons. This is the story of Mike Milbury, the man who destroyed the New York Islanders' future. In order to tell this disastrous story, let's go back to June 11, 1995, when Mike Milbury, who was fresh off a coaching stint with the Boston Bruins, was hired by the New York Islanders to fix up a team that was heading towards the wrong direction under Lorne Henning.
There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here.
Months into his head coaching job, he was named general manager when Don Maloney was let go. And yes, it was at the GM's role at which he dealt body blow after body blow to their young prospects, a reputation that earned him the nickname Mad Mike. He was known for his aggressive and often head-scratching roster movements. 4 months into working for the Isles, he traded the rights to Wade Redden, who was their second overall selection in 1995 to the Ottawa Senators in exchange for Martin Straka, and the rights to Brian Berard. This gamble was quite smart as Berard won the Calder Memorial Award for Rookie of the Year in 1997. The bad news was that Wade Redden blossomed into a solid defenseman in Ottawa for over 10 years. This soon became a pattern when Milbury traded away young talent before they could reach their peak in the hopes of a quick fix. Another transaction that rattled the fan base was trading hard-nosed hitting defenseman Darius Kasparaitis to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for Brian Smolinski in November of 1996. Smolinski was a decent goal scorer for New York, yes, but trading a popular defenseman raised eyebrows. As a result of that, Isles fans have been anxious with Mad Mike, who was soon trigger-happy with the team's assets. In January of 1997, the Islanders' ownership saga took a bizarre turn as the Spano ownership fell through, bringing more uncertainty. Milbury was jiggling between head coach and general manager duties, relinquished his head coaching duties to focus solely on being the GM. The bad news is that the team's performance on the ice remained very poor, as they routinely missed the playoffs every time. If you thought Milbury was done with his stupid trades, you'd be very well mistaken. This became evident during the 97-98 season, where he set his sights on Canucks fan favorite Trevor Linden. Milbury believed that the team needed veteran support. He got his wish in February 1998, but he had to pay a steep price. To make room for Linden, he traded away two of the team's young stars in Todd Bertuzzi and Brian McCabe. Bertuzzi was a strong forward in which the Isles selected in the first round back in 1993, and McCabe was a solid defenseman for New York, who was also chosen in the first round of the entry draft that year, and both were 22 years old. These two would shine elsewhere. For instance, Bertuzzi celebrated 650-point seasons, including a couple of 30-goal campaigns in Vancouver. On top of that, McCabe became an all-star with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Islanders' part of the trade didn't go so well, as Linden only played 107 games for the team and never reached these old scoring heights, as he was traded again in May of 1999. Islanders fans were left sore with the loss of two brightest stars who reached their peak elsewhere. That was a tough pill to swallow, as the team still wasn't better, and as a result, two of their popular players were gone. Things just got worse as the Isles held the third overall pick in 1996, and they used it to choose Jean-Pierre Dumont, a fantastic junior superstar who never even played a game for the team. That summer, Mike Milbury traded him to the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for Dmitry Nabokov. Nabokko was a promising young superstar with shown scoring touch in juniors, only scored 13 points in 30 games for the Isles before disappearing to Europe. Meanwhile, Dumont shined elsewhere, including multiple 20-goal campaigns, making this another example of Milbury giving up a talent way too soon. This made Milbury unfavorable with the Islanders, as fans had to watch their homegrown prospects celebrate success elsewhere. By the end of 1998, the team was nowhere near escaping at the NHL's basement. As a result, fan interest was way too low, and the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum was aging and falling apart, and the franchise's once loyal fan base was just staying home. Mike Milbury was about to make the most painful moves of all, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. If anyone describes the late 1990s collapse, it was Sigmund Palffy in 1999. Palffy was a dynamic goal scorer who celebrated 340-goal seasons. In fact, he was the main reason why Islanders fans still had to cheer. Unfortunately, Palffy's contract of 5 years over $24 million was just too rich for a team suffering from financial despair. There even was talk about moving Palffy to the New York Rangers, in which Islanders fans did not want to imagine their once celebrated goal scorer playing for their rival team. If that happened, it would have been an ultimate betrayal. Thankfully, that nightmare was avoided when he was traded to the Los Angeles Kings alongside Brian Smolinski in exchange for Ali Jokinen, prospect Josh Green, and the 8th overall choice in 1999 Taylor Pyatt. Pyatt was a power forward for the team, while Jokinen was a former 3rd overall pick by Los Angeles in 1997. The bad news was Jokinen only played one full season on the island before Milbury traded him. More on that disastrous deal later on. Pyatt only played 2 years before being shipped out. Meanwhile, Palffy continued his story in Los Angeles and Pittsburgh when healthy. He was inducted to the IIHF's Hall of Fame in 2019. The trade was a gut punch, as Mad Mike was willing to trade about anyone. As a result, the team's reputation around the league sank even more. The Islanders have now missed the playoffs in 7 of the last 8 years, and 1999 was no different. In January of that year, Milbury traded the man he once prized named Brian Berard to the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Felix Potvin. Potvin, who was past his prime, only managed a few wins before being let go. Not only did he do that, he also traded Tommy Salo to the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for Brad Isbister. Isbister flashed at times, but never rose to a middle six role, while Salo thrived with the Oilers. By the end of the year, with Salo, Palffy, Linden, Barard, and others gone for meaningless returns, the Isles were stripped with talent and sank to dead last. As a result of that, the team cemented themselves as a league laughingstock as a whole. If you thought 1999 was rock bottom, June 24, 2000 was a day to remember. It was when Mike Milbury tried to dynamite his way out of the rubble, only to collapse the mine on himself. Every transaction was meant to help rebuild the Islanders as a whole, however, most of them would backfire. For instance, going into the 2000 NHL entry draft, the Islanders held the 1st overall pick. The consensus top picks include Danny Heatley and Marian Gaborik. These were the high-scoring talents that the team needed. However, Mad Mike had other plans. He scouted a young teenage kid from Boston University in Rick DiPietro. Despite already having a goalie in the mix named Roberto Luongo, Milbury became convinced that DiPietro would be a franchise goalie in the many years to come. Therefore, Milbury made the decision to choose Rick DiPietro 1st overall, the very first time in NHL history a goalie had been taken 1st overall. It also meant the passing on Danny Heatley and Marian Gaborik, who went 2nd and 3rd overall respectively and went on to become elite goal scorers elsewhere. It also meant that Roberto Luongo's days in Long Island were numbered. To make room for DiPietro, he had to pay a steep price. Milbury traded Luongo alongside Ali Jokinen to the Florida Panthers in exchange for 2 young players in Mark Parrish and Oleg Vlasha. The good news was that Mark Parrish scored 20 goals a couple of times for the Islanders. The bad news was that Ali Jokinen scored 419 points in 7 years with the Panthers, which is a lot more than Parrish and Vlasha combined. If that's not enough, Roberto Luongo blossomed into an elite goalie who set records and carried teams deep into the playoffs. Milbury responded by saying, and I quote, "We didn't get chopped liver in return. "It's a win-win day for us. We're doing a little dance on the Isles desk." That quote is aged very poorly. The truth was, this trade diminished the Isles even more. Milbury then traded Eric Brewer to the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for Roman Hamrlik, who was a former first overall pick in 1992. He was part of the Isles' playoff pushes in the early 2000s. Unlike many other Milbury trades, this one proved to be a reasonable return. When the dust settled on that infamous draft day, Islanders fans were left reeling again. Having cleared house on the roster, Milbury was so adamant that his young nucleus of players can improve the team once more. However, that wasn't the case here because the Islanders finished last place in the NHL standings again. Off the ice, a significant change occurred as new ownership arrived. In April 2000, tech entrepreneurs Charles Wang and Sanjay Kumar bought the Isles. They were always willing to spend it, and they even gave Mike Milbury another chance as a whole. In the summer of 2001, Mad Mike pulled off yet another blockbuster trade in a way to right the ship. He traded Bill McCult, towering defenseman Zdeno Chara, and the second overall pick that year to the Ottawa Senators in exchange for Alexei Yashin. This gamble proved quite smart, as Yashin was a proven elite goal scorer. He was a two-time 40-goal scorer. The bad news was the second overall pick they gave up turned into Jason Spezza. Yashin enjoyed a solid first year with the New York Islanders, leading the team with 75 points. And if that's not enough, the team qualified for the playoffs for the first time since 1994, ending a long drought, and Long Island was buzzing again. The bad news was that the rippling effects on the trade became painfully clear. Zdeno Chara shined in Ottawa as an all-star defenseman. He won the Norris Trophy as the league's best defenseman and eventually won the Stanley Cup in Boston. Once Jason Spezza reached the NHL, he became a fan favorite in Ottawa by racking up nearly 1,000 points. Meanwhile, after a successful first year in Long Island, Yashin's production went downhill. Milbury signed Yashin to a 10-year contract worth $87.5 million, which at the time was the largest contract in the NHL. Expecting him to be an Islander for the next decade, the Russian forward struggled mightily as he never reached these old scoring heights in his Ottawa days. His stats declined each year, and he struggled with injuries too. That wasn't the only move Milbury made that summer. In a way to bolster the roster, he traded Tim Connolly and Taylor Pyatt to the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for Michael Peca. Even though the Islanders made the playoffs, they would lose in the first round every time. First in 2002, in which they lost in 7 games to the Toronto Maple Leafs, then in 2003, which they would lose in 5 games to the Ottawa Senators, and then again in 2004, in which they lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games. When the NHL resumed production for the 05-06 season, the league as a whole implemented a salary cap system, forcing teams to be more careful with huge contracts. The Islanders looked pretty positioned. For starters, they had a huge contract on Alexei Yashin's burden, and Rick DiPietro was hoping to become a franchise goalie for the Isles in the years to come. That wasn't the case, as the Isles struggled mightily on the ice, prompting owner Charles Wang to make some big-time decisions. For example, in June 2006, Mike Milbury stepped down as general manager, ending his decade-long tenure in Long Island. He did take a vague senior role in Wang's sports holdings, but he only lasted a year. It was widely believed that Charles Wang kicked Mike Milbury out after many years of underachievement. Mad Mike's final season with the Islanders was marked by whodunit, mister? More questionable decisions. In August of 2005, he traded Michael Peca to the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for Michael York. Peca was coming off a dominant year and the lockout. And if that's not enough, Peca carried the Oilers to a deep playoff run, only to lose to the Carolina Hurricanes in 7 games of the 2006 Stanley Cup Finals. On the other end, York was just a marginal contributor on the island.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Moves like that amplify on how, in the end, Milbury flunked to get any value of assets. At the time he was let go, the Islanders became a revolving door on players, coaches, and the laughingstock of the NHL. By the mid to late 2000s, the New York Islanders were rebuilding again, this time without the assets they should have acquired in the first place. Mike Milbury traded a long list of future star players like Zdeno Chara, Roberto Luongo, Brian Berard, Todd Bertuzzi, Sigmund Palffy, Ollie Jokinen, you get where I'm going. In return, the Isles got basically nothing. The few wins here and there where Kenny Jonsson and Roman Hammerlick were buried on the team weight in defense. Out of all the moves Matt and Mike had to make, the most painful losses were Chara and Luongo, both of whom shined elsewhere. The Isles did not have any of that star power because their best draft picks and prospects were on their jerseys. Draft misfires play a big part of that too, choosing Rick DiPietro first overall and among others while future star players were on the table. When Mike Milbury was replaced by Garth Snow, he began cleaning up the house. That was a tough task to do. During the summer of 2007, he bought out Alexei Yashin's contract, leaving the team paying him until 2015. With no young core in place, the Islanders struggled for 2 years until drafting John Tavares first overall in 2009, ending the Milbury drought of homegrown stars. It took until 2016 for the New York Islanders to win their first playoff series in 23 years since 1993. It was a reminder of how long it took for the team to escape Milbury's shadow. Because of all that, Mike Milbury has hit the notes for all the wrong reasons. He is now seen today as one of, if not the worst general managers in recent memory, a man whose constant tinkering left the team's dynasty with nothing to show for lost talent and many losing seasons. With bold trades, quick fixes, impatience, and making rushed decisions that battered the club unforgiving, Mad Mike made the Islanders a big laughingstock. Yes, the Isles eventually recovered, but fans seriously recalled what they survived during the Milbury years. It was a decade of squandered stars and what ifs. So in the end, Mike Milbury was indeedly blamed by the Islanders fans for the team's downfall. As a result of that, he has not been named GM or head coach since then. In the years since then, Mad Mike was named studio analyst of ESPN Radio Network, and he continues to work there to this very day. I'm pretty sure that all of these dumb decisions he made as general manager won't upset him so badly. Not really, no. This concludes the story of the man who destroyed the New York Islanders' future in Mike Milbury. What do you think of his coaching and general managing tenure? Do you think he was more careful with his bold trades? Absolutely. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.